I was sitting in my glass-walled office, staring at the quarterly marketing reports, but my mind was miles away. My phone buzzed on the mahogany desk. It was a notification from my bank, transfer authorized, $2,000 to Sarah Thompson. I sighed, rubbing my temples. Another month, another emergency. My name is Ella. I'm 34, a senior marketing director at a tech firm in Seattle. On paper, I have it all, a career that pays the bills and then some, a beautiful home in the suburbs, and a family that I adore. But if you looked closer past the polished exterior, you'd see the cracks. And most of those cracks radiated from one person, my younger sister, Sarah. Sarah is 30. She's a single mother of two beautiful twins, but she acts more like a teenager than a parent. She's the golden child in my parents' eyes, the one who needs help, the one who is just going through a rough patch. The problem is, that rough patch has lasted a decade. I picked up my phone and texted my husband, Mark. Did she call you? Mark replied instantly. Car broke down again. She said the mechanic wouldn't release it without payment. I handled it. Focus on your meeting, I'll love you. That's Mark. My rock. My husband. To the outside world, specifically to my family, Mark is just a stay-at-home dad. He's the guy who changes diapers, cooks dinner, and drives our 4-year-old daughter, Lily, to ballet. When the pandemic hit a few years ago, Mark lost his corporate job. I was pregnant and my career was taking off, so we made a choice. He would stay home. What my family doesn't know, what nobody knows except me and our accountant, is that Mark didn't just sit on the couch playing video games. Mark is a genius. He used his severance package to day trade and invest in real estate. He started a YouTube channel analyzing retro video games that exploded in popularity, bringing in ad revenue that dwarfs my salary. And then, he quietly founded K&M Holdings, an investment firm that specializes in residential properties. Mark isn't just comfortable, he's wealthy. He's worth 5 times what I am. But he drives a 5-year-old Honda Odyssey because it's practical for the kid. He wears hoodies and jeans because he values comfort over status. He pays Sarah's rent every month through a shell company so she doesn't know it's coming from him, just so I don't have to worry about my nieces being homeless. And how does Sarah repay him? With disdain. I packed up my bag and headed home. It was pouring rain, typical Seattle weather. When I pulled into the driveway, the smell of roast chicken wafted out to the garage. I walked inside to find Mark dancing around the kitchen with Lily standing on his feet, giggling. Mama! Lily shrieked, jumping into my arms. How was the meeting? Mark asked, kissing my forehead. He took my bag, his eyes scanning my face. You look tired. Was it the work or the transfer? She didn't even say thank you, did she? I asked, dropping into a kitchen chair. Mark shrugged, turning back to the stove to stir the gravy. It doesn't matter, Elle. The kids are safe. That's what matters. It does matter, Mark, I said, my voice rising slightly. She treats you like a servant. Last week at the barbecue, she asked you to fetch her a beer because you're used to serving people. It makes my blood boil. Mark chuckled, a low, confident sound. Let her talk. Sticks and stones, honey. Sticks and stones. Besides, we have the anniversary dinner this weekend. Let's just get through that. The anniversary dinner. My parents' 40th wedding anniversary. The whole family would be there. My stomach knotted at the thought. My phone buzzed again. It was Sarah. Hey, thanks for the cash. But the mechanic said the transmission is going too. Might need another $1,000 next week. Also, can Mark watch the twins this weekend? I have a thing. No, how are you? No, thank you. Just demands. She wants money again, I whispered. Mark placed a plate of perfectly roasted chicken and vegetables in front of me. Eat. We'll figure it out. We always do. I looked at him, this man who managed millions of dollars in assets while wearing a Super Mario apron, and felt a surge of fierce protectiveness. My family saw a loser. I saw a king. But I was starting to realize that by protecting Mark's secret, I was allowing them to walk all over him. I didn't know it then, sitting in my warm kitchen, but the storm wasn't just outside. It was heading right for our table, and this weekend, everything was going to break. The venue for my parents' anniversary was the Emerald Table, an upscale steakhouse downtown. It was the kind of place with white tablecloths, dim lighting, and waiters who scraped crumbs off the table between courses. Naturally, Mark and I paid for the reservation. My parents are retired on a fixed income, and Sarah, well, Sarah is Sarah. We arrived early. Mark looked handsome in a simple navy blazer, though I knew he hated wearing ties. He was holding Lily's hand, pointing out the lobster tank to keep her entertained. Then Sarah arrived. She stormed in like a hurricane, 20 minutes late, dragging the twins behind her. She looked disheveled but was carrying a brand new designer handbag, a Louis Vuitton that I knew cost at least $3,000. I felt a spike of irritation. She needed money for her car, but she has money for that. Sorry I'm late, she announced, dropping into the chair next to me without hugging anyone. The babysitter cancelled, so I had to bring the monsters. She glared at her own children. Mark immediately crouched down. Hey guys, why don't you come sit next to Uncle Mark? I downloaded that new game you like on my phone. The twins' faces lit up, and they scrambled over to him. Thanks, Sarah huffed, pouring herself a large glass of red wine from the bottle on the table. She didn't ask if anyone else wanted some. God, I needed this. My life is so stressful. My mother, sitting across from us, smiled sympathetically. We know, sweetie. Raising 2 kids alone is so hard. You're a warrior. I bit my tongue. Mark raises Lily. I work 60 hours a week. What is she fighting exactly? The dinner progressed with forced pleasantries until Aunt Linda, my mother's sister, tapped her glass. Linda is blunt, successful, and the only person in the family who sees through Sarah's act. I just want to propose a toast, Linda said, standing up. To Robert and Patricia for 40 years. And also to Ella and Mark. I saw your feature in the local business journal, Ella. And Mark, I heard your channel hit 1 million subscribers. That's incredible. You two are building quite the empire. The table went silent. My parents smiled politely, but Sarah's face darkened. She downed her wine and poured another glass, filling it to the brim. YouTube, Sarah scoffed, her voice loud enough to turn heads at nearby tables. Since when is playing video games a job? It's a business, Sarah, I said tightly, cutting my steak a little too hard. He works hard. Works hard. Sarah let out a sharp, cruel laugh. Ella, please. He sits in his pajamas all day while you bring home the bacon. Let's be real. She turned her glassy eyes toward Mark. It must be nice, Mark. Finding a woman desperate enough to fund your lazy lifestyle. You're basically a trophy wife. Except, you know, usually trophy wives are pretty. Sarah. Aunt Linda gasped. That is enough. No, it's not enough. Sarah's voice rose to a shout. The alcohol was doing the talking now. I'm sick of everyone praising them. I'm the one struggling. I'm the single mom. And here sits Mr. Mom, playing house. It's disgusting. It's womanly. She sneered the word like it was a curse. Mark, Sarah pointed a manicured finger at him. You're not a real man. No real man changes diapers and lets his wife pay the mortgage. You're a leech. A pathetic, effeminate leech. The entire restaurant seemed to freeze. My father looked down at his plate. My mother reached for Sarah's arm, whispering, Honey, calm down. But Sarah wasn't done. She stood up, swaying slightly. You think you're better than me? You're nothing. And then, with a flick of her wrist, she threw the contents of her wine glass. It wasn't a splash. It was a direct hit. The dark red liquid splashed across Mark's face, soaking his white dress shirt and dripping onto the expensive blazer. Mark didn't flinch. He didn't blink. He just sat there, red wine dripping from his chin, his expression unreadable. I stopped breathing. The sound of silverware clinking stopped. The air left the room. For a second, the only sound was the drip, drip, drip of wine hitting the tablecloth. Oops, Sarah giggled, a malicious, slurred sound. Looks like you need a bib, little boy. That was the moment. The moment the world shifted on its axis. I stared at the red stains spreading across Mark's chest. It looked like a gunshot wound. My vision tunneled. The humiliation wasn't for me, it was for him. The man who had silently funded her life. The man who was currently holding her crying son's hand under the table to comfort him. Mark. I started, my voice trembling. But Sarah wasn't finished. Emboldened by the silence, she looked down at my daughter, Lily, who was staring at her father with wide, terrified eyes. What are you looking at, you little brat? Sarah snapped at my 4-year-old. Stop staring at me. God, you're just like your father. Useless. Snap. Something inside me broke. It was a physical sensation, like a rubber band snapping in my chest. The heat that flooded my veins wasn't anger, it was clarity. Cold, absolute clarity. I stood up. My chair scraped loudly against the floor. Get out, I said. My voice was low, but it carried across the table. Sarah blinked, confused. What? I said, get out. Now. I stepped around the table. My mother stood up, looking panicked. Ella, sit down, Mom pleaded. She's just had too much to drink. It's a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding. I laughed, a harsh, humorless sound. She just assaulted my husband and screamed at my daughter. There is no misunderstanding. I turned to Sarah. You are done. Do you hear me? You are done. Oh, shut up, Ella, Sarah rolled her eyes, grabbing her purse. You're so dramatic. Mark doesn't even care. Look at him, he's a doormat. I looked at Mark. He wasn't a doormat. He was calmly taking a napkin and wiping the wine from his eyes. Then he stood up. He didn't look angry. He looked bored. He looked like a CEO watching a bad employee make a scene before firing them. He walked over to Sarah. He towered over her. For the first time, Sarah looked intimidated. She took a step back. Mark leaned in close. He didn't yell. He whispered, but in the silence of the room, I heard every word. You have no idea who you just messed with, Sarah. Enjoy the walk home. Then, Mark turned to me. Ella, get the kids. We're leaving. But the cake. My dad mumbled, completely oblivious to the gravity of the situation. Enjoy the cake, Dad, I said, grabbing my purse. And you can pay the bill. Since Mark isn't a real man, I'm sure you wouldn't want his money paying for your steak. We ushered the kids out. Sarah's twins were crying, asking to come with us, but Sarah yanked them back. We don't need them. We don't need anyone, she screamed at our backs. As we walked to the car in the parking lot, the rain had stopped. The air was crisp. My hands were shaking. I'm sorry, I sobbed as we got into the car. I'm so sorry, Mark. I should have. Mark turned to me. The soft, goofy husband was gone. In his place was the man who ran a multi-million-dollar portfolio. His eyes were steel. Don't apologize, Elle, he said, starting the engine. But things change now. Tonight. I'm cutting her off, I said, wiping my tears. No more car repairs. No more groceries. Good, Mark said. He pulled his phone out and tapped a few times on the screen. But that's not enough. What do you mean? I mean, Mark said, glancing at me with a look I'd never seen before, a mix of sorrow and ruthless determination. I've been protecting her because of you. I've been paying her rent for 3 years through the LLC. She lives in my building, Ella. I gasped. What? I own the complex. Riverview Apartments. I bought it 3 years ago. I told the property manager to waive her rent and bill it to my personal account as a clerical error adjustment so she wouldn't know. My jaw dropped. You've been paying her rent. The rent she complains is too high. Yes. But not anymore. Mark put the car in drive. She wants a real man. A real landlord expects rent on the first of the month. She's about to find out what the real world looks like. The drive home was silent. When we got back, Mark took Lily upstairs to get her ready for bed, leaving me alone in the kitchen with a bottle of water and my racing thoughts. My phone blew up. Texts from Mom. You embarrassed us. She's crying in the bathroom. She didn't mean it. Please send her $500. She says she can't afford an Uber home. I blocked the notifications. I sat at the kitchen island, opening my laptop. I needed to see the damage. I needed numbers. Numbers don't lie. I pulled up my bank statements for the last 5 years. I created a spreadsheet. Car repairs, $4,200. Groceries, $3,500. Medical bills for the kids, $2,100. Loans never repaid, $15,000. I felt sick. We had poured nearly $25,000 directly into Sarah's hands over the years. That was Lily's college fund. That was a down payment on a vacation home. Mark came downstairs. He had showered and changed into fresh clothes. He was holding a manila envelope. I wasn't going to show you this, he said, placing it on the counter. I didn't want to hurt you. But after tonight, you need to see who your sister really is. What is this? I asked, my hand hovering over the clasp. A few months ago, Sarah asked for $5,000 for emergency dental surgery for the twins. Remember? I nodded. Of course. I sent it immediately. I called the dentist she mentioned to verify the bill, Mark said softly. They had no record of the twins being patients. So I hired a private investigator. Just to see where the money was going. I opened the envelope. Photos spilled out. Sarah at a casino. Sarah at a liquor store loading up a cart. But the worst ones were of Sarah sitting in a parked car with a man. I recognized him instantly. Gavin. Gavin was her ex-husband. The deadbeat who walked out on her and the twins 4 years ago. The man she swore she hated. The man she told us was in jail. She's seeing him. I whispered, nausea rising in my throat. Read the financial report, Mark pointed to a document. I scanned the page. The $5,000 I sent for the dental surgery. It was transferred via Venmo to an account named Gavin_Highroller88 the same day. The $2,000 for the car repair last week. Transferred to Gavin. My monthly grocery stipend. Transferred to Gavin. She's not poor, Mark said, his voice devoid of emotion. She's funding his gambling addiction. We are funding his gambling addiction. While he lives in a motel and she cries poverty to you. I felt like the floor had dropped out from under me. All the times she cried on my shoulder. All the times she said she couldn't afford formula for the babies. She was taking food out of her own children's mouths to give to the men who abandoned them. She's been lying, I said, my voice shaking with a rage so pure it felt hot on my skin. About everything. She played us, Ella, Mark said. She played you. I looked at the Louis Vuitton bag in my memory. The expensive wine. It all made sense. She wasn't struggling, she was siphoning. She was a parasite attached to my family, feeding a tumor named Gavin. She called you a leech, I said, looking up at Mark. Tears streamed down my face, but they weren't sad tears. They were angry tears. She sat there and called you a leech. Irony is dead, Mark said dryly. I stood up. I'm not just cutting her off, Mark. I'm going to destroy the pipeline. Good, Mark said. Because I just emailed my property manager. Her rent is due on the 1st. It's the 28th. She has 3 days to come up with $2,500, or the eviction process begins. She won't have it, I said. She gave it all to Gavin. Exactly, Mark said. And when she comes crawling to you, what are you going to do? I looked at the photos of Gavin laughing in the car with my money. I looked at the red stain on Mark's discarded shirt in the trash. I'm going to let her fall, I said. The next morning, the house was quiet. It was Sunday. Usually, this was pancake day, but today, the kitchen table was a war room. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I organized. The receipts phase had begun. Mark sat opposite me with his laptop. I spoke to Henderson, he said, referring to our family attorney. He says since there's no written lease, just a month-to-month agreement she signed with the management company, we can give her a 30-day notice to vacate for no cause. But given the non-payment history that I've been covering, we can expedite it if she misses this Tuesday's payment. She'll miss it, I said, sorting through printed bank statements. I am compiling a comprehensive list of every dollar I've given her. Not for court but for the family. Smart, Mark nodded. Because she's going to spin this. She's going to tell Mom and Dad we're monsters making her homeless. I need proof, I muttered. I need undeniable proof. I spent 4 hours highlighting transactions. Liquor store. Gavin's Venmo. Casino ATM withdrawal. Liquor store again. It painted a picture of a life that was chaotic, selfish, and deceitful. But I needed one more thing. I needed to know if my parents knew. I'm going to Mom and Dad's, I announced around noon. Do you want me to come? Mark asked. No, I shook my head. If you're there, they'll just focus on the wine incident. They need to see me. Alone. They need to see their responsible daughter breaking down. I drove to my parents' house. It was a modest ranch-style home, the house I grew up in. It usually smelled like lavender and old books. Today it smelled like betrayal. When I walked in, my mother was sitting at the kitchen table, nursing a cup of tea. Her eyes were puffy. My dad was watching golf in the living room, pretending nothing was happening. Ella, Mom said, standing up. Thank goodness. Have you spoken to Sarah? She's distraught. She says Mark threatened her. Mark didn't threaten her, I said calmly, placing my heavy binder on the table. He told her the truth. You have to forgive her, Mom pleaded. She was drunk. She's under so much pressure with the boys. Mom, I cut her off. Why didn't you tell me Gavin was back in the picture? The room went dead silent. My mother froze. Her teacup clattered onto the saucer. In the living room, my dad turned down the volume on the TV. I don't know what you're talking about, Mom stammered, looking away. Don't lie to me. I slammed my hand on the table. I have the photos. I have the bank transfers. Sarah has been funneling my money, our money, to that deadbeat for 6 months. Did you know? Mom crumbled. She sank back into the chair, covering her face with her hands. He promised he'd changed, she sobbed. Sarah loves him. She thinks if she helps him with his debts, he'll come home and be a father to the boys. We didn't want to ruin her hope. So you let me pay for it? I asked, my voice trembling with hurt. You watched me work 60 hours a week, watched Mark scrimp and save, watched us sacrifice our vacations to send her money, knowing she was giving it to a gambler. You have so much, Ella. Dad yelled from the living room. He walked in, his face red. You and Mark are rich. What's a few $1,000s to you? Your sister has nothing. She has nothing because she gives it to him. I screamed back. She's your sister. Dad shouted. Family helps family. You don't keep score. I am keeping score now, I said, tapping the binder. Because I'm done being the ATM. I'm done being the backup plan. If you cut her off, Mom whispered, looking up with tear-filled eyes, Gavin will leave her again. She'll spiral. Please, Ella. Just pay her rent for a few more months. Just until she gets on her feet. I looked at them. My parents. The people who taught me to work hard and be honest. They were enabling a lie. They were willing to sacrifice my financial security to enable Sarah's delusion. No, I said coldly. And you should know. Mark owns her building. My parents stared at me blankly. What? Mark owns the apartment complex. He's been the one ensuring she has a roof over her head. And since she called him a useless housewife, he's decided to stop being a useless landlord. She's getting evicted. You can't. Mom shrieked. She has children. Then maybe you should take them in, I said, picking up my purse. Because I'm done. I walked out of the house to the sound of my mother crying and my father shouting my name. I felt like an orphan. But I also felt free. The drive back from my parents' house was the longest of my life. I parked the car in my driveway but couldn't get out. I just gripped the steering wheel and screamed. I screamed until my throat was raw. It wasn't just the money. Money comes and goes. It was the realization that in the hierarchy of love, I was second. Sarah's chaos was more important than my stability. Sarah's lies were more protected than my truth. My phone buzzed. A text from Dad. If you go through with this eviction, don't bother coming for Christmas. You are destroying this family over pride. I blocked him. My own father. I walked inside. Mark was waiting by the door. He took one look at my face and pulled me into a hug. I collapsed against him, sobbing into his shirt, a cheap, comfortable cotton t-shirt that felt better than any silk. They knew, I choked out. They knew about Gavin. They said I should pay because I can afford it. Mark stroked my hair. I'm sorry, Elle. I'm so sorry. They chose her, I whispered. They always choose her. Then we choose us, Mark said firmly, pulling back to look me in the eye. We choose Lily. We choose our peace. You are not their parent, Ella. You are her sister. And you have done enough. We spent the rest of the evening in a strange, quiet bubble. We cooked dinner together. We played board games with Lily. We didn't talk about Sarah or my parents. It was like we were fortifying our castle, pulling up the drawbridge. But the enemy was massing at the gates. Monday morning arrived. I went to work, keeping my head down. Around 10 a.m., my phone alerted me to a Facebook notification. I hesitated. I knew I shouldn't look. But I did. Sarah had posted a long, rambling status update. It's funny how money changes people. My own sister, who lives in a mansion and drives a Mercedes, refuses to help her starving nephews. She and her husband mocked me for being poor. They are trying to kick me out on the street in the middle of winter. Please pray for me and my babies. We have nowhere to go. #ToxicFamily #RichPeopleProblems #heartbroken. It had 45 likes. Comments from distant cousins and her friends were pouring in. OMG, that's horrible. How can family be so cruel? Karma will get them, babe. My face burned. She was playing the victim perfectly. She left out the wine, the insults, the gambling boyfriend. I wanted to reply. I wanted to post the photos of Gavin. I wanted to post the bank statements. Don't do it, Mark's voice came from the doorway of my home office. I was working remotely that day. He was holding 2 cups of coffee. She's lying to everyone, I said, pointing at the screen. She's ruining my reputation. Let her, Mark said, sitting down. Never interrupt your enemy when they are making a mistake. She's escalating. That means she's desperate. Desperate people are dangerous, I countered. Desperate people make sloppy errors, Mark corrected. And she just made a big one. He handed me a piece of paper. It was a letter from a lawyer. Not a good lawyer, a strip mall, we don't get paid unless you win kind of lawyer. What is this? She's suing us, Mark said, surprisingly calm. Or rather, threatening to sue. I read the legal jargon. Intent to sue for palimony and violation of verbal contract. The letter claimed that I had verbally promised to support Sarah and her children indefinitely, and that by cutting her off, I was causing intentional infliction of emotional distress. She was demanding $5,000 a month in maintenance. Is this a joke? I laughed incredulously. Palimony is for divorce. We aren't married. It's a shakedown, Mark said. Gavin is behind this. This is a gambler's move. An all-in bluff. She's suing the hand that fed her, I said, shaking my head in disbelief. She's actually insane. She thinks we'll settle to avoid the embarrassment, Mark said. She thinks we'll write a check to make it go away. He took a sip of coffee. Call Henderson. Tell him we're not settling. Tell him we want a court date. Or better yet, a mediation meeting. Why mediation? Because, Mark smiled, a shark-like smile. In court, lawyers do the talking. In mediation, she has to talk. And I want to look her in the eye when I drop the hammer. The mediation was set for Thursday at a neutral conference room in downtown Seattle. In the days leading up to it, the harassment escalated. Sarah texted me 50 times a day. You can stop this. Do you want your nephews sleeping under a bridge? I'll drop the lawsuit if you give me $50,000 up front. I didn't respond. My Aunt Linda called me. I saw the Facebook post, she said. I commented, maybe tell them about the Louis Vuitton bag, Sarah, and she blocked me. I laughed for the first time in days. Thanks, Aunt Linda. Give her hell, kid, Linda said. She's been getting a free ride for too long. Thursday morning. Mark wore his best suit, a charcoal gray bespoke piece that cost more than Sarah's car. He shaved. He looked every inch the millionaire businessman he secretly was. Why the suit? I asked. I thought we were keeping the secret. Today is the reveal, Mark adjusted his cufflinks. Today, the housewife retires. We arrived at the conference room. Sarah was already there with her lawyer, a greasy-looking man in an ill-fitting suit. And sitting next to her was Gavin. He was wearing a leather jacket and chewing gum. He looked at me with a smirk. My blood boiled. Sarah had brought the leech to the negotiation. Let's begin, the mediator said. Sarah's lawyer started speaking. He spun a tale of woe. How I, the wealthy sister, had created a dependency, and then cruel yanked it away. He claimed I had abandoned the family. My client is requesting a lump sum settlement of $100,000 for emotional damages and a continuation of the $2,500 monthly housing stipend for 2 years, the lawyer concluded. I looked at Sarah. She was looking at her fingernails, looking bored. She thought she had won. She thought I was too weak to fight. Are you finished? Mark asked. His voice was deep, commanding. Sarah's lawyer sneered. Mr. Thompson, you have no income. You are a dependent of your wife. Please let the breadwinner speak. Sarah snickered. Yeah, Mark. Go change a diaper. Mark didn't get angry. He leaned forward, clasping his hands on the mahogany table. Actually, Mark said, I'd like to talk about the rent. We are demanding the rent be paid. Sarah shouted. My landlord is threatening to kick me out. Your landlord isn't threatening, Mark said calmly. Your landlord is promising. What do you know about it? Gavin spoke up, his voice raspy. You don't own Jack. Mark reached into his briefcase. He pulled out a thick document. It was the deed to the Riverview apartment complex. He slid it across the table. Read the name of the LLC on the deed, Mark said. Sarah's lawyer picked it up. He frowned. K&M Holdings. So. K&M, Mark pointed to himself, then to me. Kevin, Mark, and Ella. Sarah froze. Her eyes went wide. She looked from the paper to Mark, then to Gavin. You. Sarah stammered. You own my building. I bought it 3 years ago, Mark said. I instructed the management to be lenient with you because you are family. I have absorbed $90,000 in lost rent and damages caused by you. I have the receipts right here. He slid another stack of papers. You don't pay rent, Sarah, Mark continued, his voice icy. I pay your rent. Me. The useless housewife. I have been keeping a roof over your head while you mock me to my face. The room was silent. Even Gavin stopped chewing his gum. And regarding your lawsuit, Mark turned to her lawyer. You are suing for breach of contract. Excellent. Let's talk about fraud. Because I have evidence here that Sarah has been soliciting funds for child support and diverting them to an illegal gambling operation run by. He looked at Gavin. Mr. Gavin Miller. Gavin's face went pale. That's a lie. Sarah shrieked, standing up. Sit down. Mark didn't yell, but his voice cracked like a whip. Sarah sat. I have the bank records, Mark said. I have the PI photos. I have everything. So here is the deal. He stood up, buttoning his jacket. You drop this lawsuit immediately. You vacate my apartment in 24 hours. If you do not, I will file a countersuit for fraud, theft by deception, and I will hand over all evidence of Mr. Miller's illegal gambling activities to the IRS and the police. Mark looked at Gavin. And I bet you haven't paid taxes on those winnings, have you, Gavin? Gavin looked terrified. He grabbed his jacket. I'm out. I didn't sign up for this. Gavin? Sarah grabbed his arm. Where are you going? You said they were soft. Gavin hissed, shaking her off. You said they would just pay. He's the landlord. You idiot. I'm not going to jail for you. Gavin stormed out of the room. Sarah sat there, alone. Her lawyer was busy packing up his briefcase, clearly realizing he wasn't getting paid. 24 hours, Sarah, I said, finally speaking. Pack your bags. The mediation room felt like a vacuum after Gavin left. Sarah sat slumped in her chair, looking smaller than I had ever seen her. The arrogance was gone, replaced by a terrified realization that the safety net she had been bouncing on, and spitting on, had just been removed. Her lawyer cleared his throat. Well, given the new information regarding property ownership and the potential fraud counterclaims, I advise my client to withdraw her petition. He looked at Sarah. We're done here. He left too. Now it was just me, Mark, and Sarah. You can't do this, Sarah whispered. She looked up, mascara running down her cheeks. Where will I go? Mom and Dad don't have room for us. That sounds like a problem for a strong, independent woman to solve, Mark said. He wasn't mocking her, he was quoting her own Facebook bio. Ella, Sarah turned to me, switching tactics. She reached across the table, trying to grab my hand. I pulled it away. Ella, please. I'm your sister. I made a mistake. I was drunk. Gavin, he manipulated me. He manipulated you? I asked, incredulous. You manipulated everyone, Sarah. You used your own children as bait to fish money out of my pocket. I was desperate. You were greedy. I snapped. You wanted the lifestyle without the work. You wanted the husband without the partnership. You looked at Mark, a man who loves his family more than anything, and you spat on him because he didn't fit your shallow idea of masculinity. I stood up. And the worst part? Even now, you aren't sorry for what you did. You're sorry you got caught. I am sorry. Sarah wailed. I'm sorry. Please don't evict me. Give me one more month. I'll break up with Gavin. I'll get a job. I looked at Mark. He gave me a slight nod. It was up to me. No, I said. The word hung in the air. No more chances, I continued. You have 24 hours. If you aren't out, the sheriff will escort you out. And Sarah, if you ever use my name, my husband's name, or my daughter's name in a lie again, I will see you until you don't even own that fake Louis Vuitton bag. We walked out. When we got to the elevator, my legs gave out. Mark caught me. You did it, he whispered. I feel terrible, I admitted, leaning against his chest. That's because you're a good person, Mark said. Toxic people train us to feel guilty for setting boundaries. But the guilt will pass. The peace will last. We went home. We didn't celebrate. We just ordered pizza and watched a movie with Lily. But for the first time in years, I didn't check my phone. I didn't worry about the next emergency. The next morning, Friday, was the deadline. Mark went to the apartment complex with the sheriff. I stayed home. I couldn't watch. Around noon, Mark called me. It's done, he said. She's gone. Was it bad? It was loud, Mark admitted. She made a scene. Screamed that we were thieves. The neighbors actually applauded when the sheriff put her in the squad car for disturbing the peace. She was arrested. Briefly. Detained for disorderly conduct. Mom and Dad picked her up. And the apartment? Trashed, Mark sighed. She left garbage everywhere. And she spray-painted loser on the living room wall. I closed my eyes. I'm so sorry, Mark. Don't be, Mark said, and I could hear the smile in his voice. Paint is cheap. Freedom is priceless. We're free, Ella. I hung up the phone and looked out the window. The rain had stopped. The sun was trying to peek through the gray Seattle clouds. It wasn't a happy ending for Sarah. But for us, it was a new beginning. I realized then that cutting off a toxic family member isn't an act of hate. It's an act of self-love. I went to the kitchen and made myself a cup of tea. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Mom. I debated ignoring it, but curiosity got the better of me. She's staying in the basement. We are disappointed in you, Ella. But we found Gavin's texts on her phone. You were right about him. I didn't reply. Being right didn't fix the years of neglect. Being right didn't refund the money. But it was a start. I put the phone down and walked away. The silence in our house after Sarah's eviction was heavy, but it wasn't empty. It was the kind of silence you feel after a thunderstorm passes. The air is crisp, the danger is gone, but the ground is still wet, reminding you of the violence that just occurred. 2 weeks passed. We didn't hear from Sarah directly, but we heard about her. Oh, did we hear about her? My mother became the unwilling messenger of Sarah's misery. Mom would call me, her voice dropped to a whisper so Sarah wouldn't hear her from the basement. Yes, the basement. The 30-year-old golden child was back in her childhood bedroom, minus the posters of boy bands, plus 2 confused toddlers and a mountain of resentment. She refuses to come up for dinner, Mom whispered one Tuesday evening. She says we're all against her. She just lies there scrolling on her phone, Ella. She's not looking for a job. She's not looking for an apartment. That's not my problem, Mom, I said, stirring pasta sauce in my kitchen, cradling the phone between my ear and shoulder. She needs to hit rock bottom. But the boys. Mom's voice cracked. They're sleeping on a blow-up mattress. Gavin is gone. He blocked her number the second the money stopped flowing. She's heartbroken. She's not heartbroken, Mom. She's broke. There's a difference. I hung up, feeling a pang of guilt that I quickly shoved down. Mark walked in, carrying Lily. He looked at my face and knew immediately. Mom, he guessed. Mom, I confirmed. Sarah is making their lives a living hell. Predictable, Mark said, setting Lily down. But we have a meeting tomorrow. Remember? The meeting. My parents had requested a family summit to clear the air. They wanted to come over to our house, the house Sarah was banned from, to discuss the future. Wednesday evening, my parents' Buick pulled into our driveway. They looked 10 years older than they had at the anniversary dinner. They walked in, looking around our home with new eyes. Before, they saw a house bought by their daughter's corporate salary. Now, they were looking at the home of a real estate mogul. We sat in the living room. Mark didn't offer them wine. He offered water. The atmosphere was formal. We can't go on like this, Dad started, his hands clasping his knees. Sarah is unmanageable. She screams at your mother. She throws things. She blames us for letting you evict her. We didn't let anything happen, Mark said calmly. We enforced a boundary. We know, Dad sighed, looking defeated. But we saw the bank statements you sent, Ella. We saw the transfers to Gavin. We apologize. We were blind. It was the first time in my life my father had apologized to me regarding Sarah. It felt good, but it also felt too late. Apology accepted, I said. But she is not coming back here. And we are not giving her money. We aren't asking for money for her, Mom said, wiping her eyes. We're asking for advice. You too, you're successful. Mark, you built this whole company right under our noses. What do we do? She won't work. She says the world owes her. Mark stood up and walked to his home office, motioning for them to follow. It was the first time they had ever really stepped inside his sanctuary. 3 large monitors were glowing. Charts, graphs, real estate listings. A plaque on the wall read, K&M Holdings, Top Investor 2023. This isn't a game, Mark said, gesturing to the screens. This is discipline. Sarah lacks it. And as long as she lives in your basement with free food and internet, she will never find it. He then pulled up a specific file on his computer. I want to show you something, Mark said. Because Sarah claims I'm a monster who hates her children. He opened a folder labeled Trust Fund, Twins. My parents squinted at the screen. Their jaws dropped. What is this? Dad asked. For the last 3 years, Mark explained, his voice steady. Every time I paid Sarah's rent from one of my accounts to another, I took a percentage of the profit from the building and deposited it here. This is a college fund for your grandsons. There is over $40,000 in here. I gasped. Even I didn't know the exact amount. You did this? Mom whispered, staring at Mark. After she called you. After she called me useless. After she called me womanly. Yes, Mark said. Because they are innocent children. But here is the kicker. Mark turned to face them. Sarah cannot touch this money. If she tries to access it, the trust dissolves and goes to charity. It is for their education only. I am securing their future while she is busy destroying their present. My mother burst into tears. Ugly, racking sobs. She collapsed onto the office sofa. We failed, she cried. We praised the wrong child. We protected the wrong child. It was a moment of vindication so powerful it almost hurt. Mark, the man they had sneered at, was the financial savior of the entire lineage. You didn't fail, I said, sitting beside her. But you enabled. And now, you have to stop. If you want Sarah to survive, you have to kick her out of the basement. You have to force her to stand on her own 2 feet. She'll hate us, Dad whispered. She already hates you, I said brutally. At least this way, she might respect you eventually. They left that night with a plan. They were going to give Sarah a timeline. 30 days to find a job or leave. No more free rides. I closed the door and leaned against it. You're amazing, I told Mark. The trust fund, really? I don't punish kids for their parents' sins, Mark shrugged. Besides, knowing Sarah can't touch that money will drive her crazier than being broke. He was right. But we underestimated just how crazy Sarah would get when the walls started closing in. The deadline my parents gave Sarah acted like a pressure cooker. Instead of looking for a job, Sarah looked for a scapegoat. And who better than the sister who had stolen her life? It started with the rumors. Small towns and suburban communities talk, and Sarah was singing like a canary to anyone who would listen. She went to the grocery store, the hair salon, even the local PTA meetings, for a school her kids didn't even attend yet, spreading poison. My sister's husband embezzles money. Ella abused me as a child. They stole my inheritance from Grandma. I heard it all from neighbors who looked at me with pity or suspicion. It hurt, but I held my head high. I knew the truth. But then, she crossed the line. I was at work in the middle of a presentation to the VP of sales, when the receptionist buzzed in. Ella, there's a woman in the lobby. She says she's your sister. She's loud. My blood ran cold. I apologized to the room and hurried out. Sarah was standing in the sleek, glass-walled lobby of my tech firm. She looked manic. Her hair was unwashed, and she was wearing sweatpants. She was screaming at the security guard. I know she's up there. She stole my money. She works for a fake company. Sarah, I said, stepping out of the elevator. Stop this. She spun around. Her eyes were bloodshot. She pointed a shaking finger at me. You, she screeched. You poisoned Mom and Dad against me. They told me I have to leave in 2 weeks. Where am I supposed to go, Ella? A shelter. You could get a job, I said, keeping my voice calm despite the dozen coworkers watching from the balcony above. You could stop sending money to Gavin. Gavin is a victim, she yelled. Just like me. You think you're so perfect with your rich husband. I know his secret, Ella. My heart skipped a beat. Did she know about the investment firm? I know he's a fraud, she shouted to the lobby. He doesn't have a job. He plays video games. He's a loser. The irony was palpable. Here she was, unemployed, screaming about my millionaire husband being a loser. Sarah, I said, stepping closer. Mark earns more in a month than you have earned in your entire life. He owns the building you lived in. He owns the car you drove. He owns the debt you walked away from. You want to talk about losers? Look in the mirror. Liar, she lunged at me. Security was faster. 2 large guards grabbed her arms. Get off me, she shrieked. I'm suing you. I'll tell everyone. You're trespassing, the head of security said firmly. Ma'am, you need to leave, or we will call the police. Call them, she spat. Arrest her. She's the thief. I looked at my sister. Really looked at her. I didn't see the little girl I used to play dolls with. I saw a stranger consumed by envy. There was no love left in her eyes, only a black hole of need. Call the police, I told the guard. Sarah's face went pale. She didn't think I'd do it. She thought I'd crumble to avoid the scene. Ella, no, she whimpered, shifting instantly from aggression to pity. I didn't mean it. I'm just stressed. Please. Don't let them take me. I can't help you, Sarah, I said, turning my back. I have a meeting. I walked back to the elevators while she screamed my name. I didn't look back. I got into the elevator, pressed the button, and when the doors closed, I let out a breath I felt like I had been holding for 20 years. Later that afternoon, Mark called. I saw the security footage, he said. He had access to everything, of course. Are you okay? I'm fine, I said. And I was surprised to find that I meant it. Is she in jail? They held her for a few hours for public disturbance. Dad picked her up again. But this is the end, Ella. Dad called me. He told her if she leaves the house to harass us again, he's locking the door behind her. She's desperate, I said. She knows the free ride is over. She's also realizing something else, Mark said, a note of grim satisfaction in his voice. She tried to log into her old email today. The one she used for the business with Gavin. And she found the email from the lawyer regarding the trust fund. I made sure a notification was sent. She knows about the money for the twins. She knows, Mark said. And she knows she can't touch a cent of it. She called Henderson screaming, demanding the money be released to her as legal guardian. Henderson laughed and hung up. She must be furious. She is. But she's also powerless. That's the thing about bullies, Elle. Take away their audience and their funding, and they shrink. I went home that night feeling lighter. The toxicity was being purged, layer by painful layer. But the finale wasn't quite over. Sarah had one last act of self-destruction left in her, and it would happen right on our front lawn. If you have ever had to call the cops on a family member, you know the specific kind of heartbreak it brings. It's not sharp, it's a dull, heavy ache. If you're with me so far, tap the like button. Let's finish this. The timeline my parents gave Sarah expired on a rainy Friday. 30 days were up. She hadn't found a job. She hadn't found an apartment. She had spent the month posting vague threats on social media and trying to contact Gavin from burner phones. My dad, true to his word for the first time in his life, packed her bags. I wasn't there, but Mom told me later. He put her boxes on the porch. He told her she could come inside to shower and eat, but she couldn't sleep there anymore. He offered to drive her to a women's shelter 3 towns over, a place that helped mothers get back on their feet with job training. It was a tough love intervention. Sarah didn't take the ride to the shelter. Instead, she took an Uber to our house. It was 8 p.m. We were watching a movie. The rain was lashing against the windows, setting a gloomy backdrop for the end of this tragedy. We heard the pounding on the door. Not a knock, a pounding. Open up, I know you're in there. Mark paused the movie. Lily looked up, scared. Is that Auntie Sarah? Take her upstairs, I told Mark. Put on her noise-canceling headphones. Turn up the Disney music. Mark nodded. He grabbed Lily and ran up the stairs. I'll be right back down. Don't open it. I walked to the door but didn't unlock it. I looked through the peephole. Sarah was soaked. She was holding a bottle of cheap vodka. She looked like a ghost. Ella, she screamed, slapping the wood. I know you have the money. The trust fund. Give it to me. It's my kids' money. It's for their college, Sarah. I shouted through the door. Go away. I need it now, she wailed, sliding down the doorframe. Gavin said he'd take me back if I had $5,000. Just give me $5,000, Ella. I'll never ask for anything again. The truth finally came out. It wasn't about rent. It wasn't about food. It was about buying the affection of a man who despised her. He doesn't love you. I yelled. He's using you. Go to the shelter, Sarah. Dad is waiting for you. I hate you, she screamed, throwing the bottle. It smashed against our brick siding. I hate you. You stole my life. You stole my luck. You think you're better than me just because you married a rich guy. I'm better than you because I don't use people. I opened the door. It was a mistake. I shouldn't have done it. But I wanted her to see me. She lunged. She was wet, smelling of booze and desperation. She tried to push past me into the house. Where is he? She hissed. Where's the checkbook? Get out. I shoved her back. She stumbled on the wet porch steps and fell onto the grass. She didn't get up. She just lay there in the mud, sobbing. It was a pathetic, guttural sound. The sound of a woman who realized she had played all her cards and lost. Mark appeared behind me. He had his phone to his ear. 911. Yes. I have an intruder. She's intoxicated and violent. Yes, I have a restraining order pending. Please hurry. Sarah heard him. She looked up from the mud, rain plastering her hair to her face. You called the cops, she whispered. You gave me no choice, Mark said. He stepped out onto the porch, standing next to me. He didn't look angry anymore. He looked sad. Look at yourself, Sarah. Is this who you want to be? You ruined me, she spat. No, Mark said softly. You did this. Every choice led you here. Blue lights flashed down the street. The neighbors were coming out onto their porches. The humiliation was public and absolute. When the officers arrived, Sarah didn't fight. She was too exhausted. They handcuffed her. They put her in the back of the cruiser. One of the officers, a man I recognized from the eviction, approached us. We'll take her to the station for detox, he said. Given the prior incident and the trespassing, she's looking at mandatory rehab, if she wants to avoid jail time. Child Protective Services will be involved regarding the twins. The twins are with my parents, I said quickly. They are safe. Good, the officer nodded. We'll let the parents know. Get some rest, folks. It's over. We watched the cruiser drive away. The rain washed the vodka off the porch. I turned to Mark. I felt hollowed out. She chose a man who hates her over a sister who loved her, I whispered. She's sick, Ella, Mark said, putting his arm around me. But she's gone. And the twins, will make sure they're okay. We have the fund. We have your parents on board now. We can break the cycle for them. I hope so, I said. We went inside and locked the door. I threw the deadbolt. It made a solid, final click. That sound, that click, was the end of a lifetime of guilt. I had cut the anchor. I was finally drifting away from the storm. The air in Kyoto smells different than Seattle. It smells of cedar, incense, and crisp autumn leaves. I sat on the balcony of a traditional ryokan, watching the sunrise over the mountains. Mark was still asleep inside, and Lily was curled up in a futon next to him. We made it. We finally took the trip. The last 6 months had been a blur of legal paperwork and healing. Sarah was in a court-ordered rehab facility 2 states away. She was allowed 1 phone call a week. She called Mom mostly. Mom said she was sounding better, clearer. Maybe rock bottom was the foundation she needed to rebuild. Maybe not. But that wasn't my burden to carry anymore. My parents had stepped up. Without Sarah there to manipulate them, they focused on the twins. They used the money Mark and I provided, strictly controlled, paid directly to daycares and schools, to give those boys a stable life. I visited them on weekends. They were happier. They stopped asking about their Uncle Gavin. Mark's business, K&M Holdings, continued to thrive. But he didn't go back to the shadows. He started doing interviews. He started mentoring young fathers who wanted to balance investing with parenting. He became the real man everyone now knew he was. I took a sip of my matcha tea. It was warm and earthy. I thought about the anniversary dinner. The wine stain on Mark's shirt. The insults. It felt like a lifetime ago. If I hadn't snapped that night, if I hadn't stood up, we would still be bleeding money. I would still be drowning in resentment. Mark stepped out onto the balcony, wrapping a robe around himself. He sat down next to me, resting his chin on my shoulder. Thinking about her, he asked. He always knew. Thinking about us, I corrected. Thinking about how peaceful this is. It's what you deserve, Mark said. We spent 10 years lighting ourselves on fire to keep her warm. Now we just enjoy the sun. Do you think she'll ever change? I asked. Maybe, Mark said. But that's her story to write. You're done co-writing it. He was right. I had spent so long being a supporting character in Sarah's drama, that I forgot I was the protagonist of my own life. I pulled out my phone. No unread texts. No emergency money requests. No guilt-tripping voicemails. Just a photo from my dad of the twins playing soccer with the caption, "Thank you." I looked at Mark. "Thank you," I said. "For buying the building. For the trust fund. For waiting for me to see the truth." Mark smiled, that easy, confident smile. "I'd do it again. But let's not." "Agreed," I laughed. "Let's not." We sat there as the sun fully crested the mountains, flooding the valley with golden light. To everyone listening to this, family is complicated. We are taught that blood is thicker than water, that we have to endure abuse because it's family. But I'm here to tell you that's a lie. You are not an ATM. You are not a doormat. You are not a punching bag for someone else's insecurity. Real love doesn't demand you bankrupt yourself. Real love doesn't humiliate you at a dinner table. Real love is the person who holds your hand when you have to make the hard choice. Real love is the person who builds a future for you while the world calls him names. If you are holding onto a rope that is burning your hands, let go. It's scary. You will feel guilty. You will be called the villain. But once you let go, you can finally use those hands to build something beautiful. Like a trip to Japan. Like a college fund. Like a life of peace. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it gives you the courage to find your own peace.